Hey everyone! Today we're diving into a game that explores the deepest corners of the human mind. A game that blends beauty with madness, reality with nightmares. The game is called Alice, Madness Returns, a dark and twisted version of the classic tale Alice in Wonderland. But here, there are no pink dreams or magical lands. In this world, Alice faces her past, her trauma, and the ghosts of her memories haunting her at every turn. A wild journey between reality and illusion, guilt and escape. A story that makes you question, where does imagination end and where does madness begin? And before we start, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you won't miss any of the upcoming stories and videos. Now get ready, because we're about to step into a world with no logic, Alice's world, where imagination turns into a nightmare. The story begins with a memory, the most painful one in young Alice Liddell's life. She sits before her psychiatrist, Dr. Angus Bumby, during yet another therapy session, as he tries to help her confront the remnants of her past. Alice tells him that the painful memories still haunt her, as if she's reliving them every single day. But the doctor's advice is rather strange. He tells her that the solution isn't to face them, but to forget them. He believes that some memories bind a person to their suffering more than they set them free. The inescapable truth is that Alice's parents and older sister all perished in a tragic house fire when she was a child. She was the only survivor of that dreadful night. Since then, guilt and grief have slowly devoured her from the inside. Why did she survive, and why didn't they? Alice admits that she sometimes escapes into her imagination just to cope with her thoughts. The doctor doesn't object. In fact, he believes that temporary escape might help her forget. It's clear that the two have known each other for quite some time. After the session, the doctor asks her to pick up some medicine from the local pharmacy before their next appointment. As she leaves his office, we see Alice walking among a group of orphans who, like her, have faced their own share of trauma. But strangely, they all seem to despise her for reasons unknown. Every time she passes by, they mock her, sneer, and throw cruel words her way. She walks away and wanders through the dark alleys of London, until her attention is caught by a white cat. She follows it hesitantly, until she finds herself in a strange place, an old coat room. Then, everything begins to distort. Grotesque, monstrous faces start appearing around her, closing in from all sides. It's clear this isn't real. It's something happening inside her tormented mind. At that very moment, an old woman grabs her, Miss Witless, a nurse who once cared for Alice back when she was in the asylum. Her gaze is sharp and filled with bitterness, as if she still holds Alice responsible for something long buried. This woman has always reminded Alice of her supposed sins, claiming the fire was her fault, that she caused her family's death, until Alice began to believe it herself during her weakest moments. Now, after all these years, Miss Witless reappears, offering her help, but clearly expecting something in return. Still, deep down, Alice feels that this time, something is different. Alice stated in one of her old sessions that the fire was her fault, and that if she had paid attention to the chimney, none of this would have happened. Miss Witless took her words and said she was ready to tell the police everything. But the matter became unimportant and different for Alice, because she needed something from Witless, and she was sure that she was the only one who knew where it was, which is the stuffed rabbit. The only thing that survived the fire, and which Alice considers the dearest thing she owns. After that, Alice climbed with Witless to the roof of one of the old houses to look for it, but suddenly everything changed before her eyes. She saw Witness transform into a strange and frightening creature, and then the ground collapsed beneath Alice's feet, and she fell into a completely different world. She found herself in Wonderland. This world is considered a distorted reflection of her exhausted mind, a refuge she created herself so she could escape from a painful reality into a strange, real world she faces in her own way. It seemed like a lucid dream, but she does not know what will happen to her body in the real world. The first one she meets there is the mysterious gray cat, who always speaks in riddles and hard-to-understand words. And then the cat offered Alice that he be her guide in this strange world, without explaining why he helps her in the first place. And the first gift he gave her was a small bottle labeled "Drink Me," a strange potion that makes Alice shrink in size for a short time. During that time, the cat advised her to pay attention to everything around her, because the small world hides secrets she cannot see at her normal size. Indeed, she began to discover new places and gather small pieces of her old memories scattered in every corner of this world, and each shard brings her closer to the truth she is trying to remember. On her way, she finds the remains of a creature holding a sharp blade, so she grabs it and begins to use it as her first weapon in facing dangers. Now Alice is ready. She has everything she needs to begin her journey through this madness. But every corner in this place hides strange creatures, each of which has meaning and a reason for its existence. After a series of encounters, she meets the Duchess, an eccentric woman who had been her enemy in the past, but changed after it was revealed that her lifestyle was completely different. There she asks Alice to help her prepare her food using a huge pepper grinder. But the strange thing is that this tool was not merely a kitchen utensil, because it turned into a powerful and effective long-range weapon, as if it were designed more for defense than for cooking. And here Alice begins to realize that this world is nothing but a mirror of her old life. Every character she meets represents a part of her memory, and little by little Wonderland begins to disintegrate and vanish, as the bright colors start to disappear, and laughter turns into a terrifying echo, and everything that was beautiful becomes dark, as if her imaginary world has begun to collapse under the weight of the truth she is trying to forget. As Alice continues her journey inside this strange world, everything starts to become darker and more mysterious. Suddenly, a large number of enemies appear everywhere, strange threats that seem impossible to overcome. Alice fights bravely, and after a series of battles, she rides a small gondola moving on rusty railway tracks, leading her to the Kingdom of the Hatter, the place that was once the center of life in Wonderland. According to the Gray Cat, the Hatter has a strong connection to the corruption of this world and its transformation into a dark and gloomy place. When Alice arrives, she discovers that his kingdom has turned into a huge industrial area, full of gears and machines spinning endlessly. Everything there is a big mechanical puzzle whose pieces must be gathered to discover the truth. During her search, Alice opens a door from which a fiery glow appears, and there she remembers the first scene from the night that changed her life. She remembered their library before the fire, when the room was full of books. At that moment, Alice started to doubt that the fire was just an accident. Maybe someone intentionally tried to harm her family. But who and why? After this discovery, she meets the Hatter, or rather only his head, because his body has disappeared. He tells her that the real danger is not from him, but from the Infernal Train that crosses Wonderland, and that it is the source of all corruption. If she gathers certain parts of this world, she will know how to stop it. Alice agrees and starts her journey again. She discovers that the March Hare and his companion, the Dormouse, are the ones who keep the parts of the Hatter's body. The hare uses his legs to operate his giant machines, and the Dormouse keeps his arms in another distant factory. Strangely, the two were once just his assistants, but he turned them into machines, so they rebelled against him and took over their factories. After fierce battles, Alice managed to recover the body parts, but when the Hatter was restored, he became even more insane, laughing, speaking nonsense, and refusing to explain anything. He took her to the top of his kingdom and showed her the cause of all the corruption, a massive machine spinning endlessly. He said it was built by the hare and the dormouse to strengthen their power, but the truth was much deeper. Everything in this world was a symbol inside Alice's mind. Every machine, every creature, every event reflected an inner struggle she was trying to escape from. Moments later, the hare and the dormouse attack her using that gigantic machine, but their attempt fails. The machine collapses on them and they die beneath the rubble. The Hatter completely breaks down. He starts raving and laughing insanely, playing with their corpses like dolls, talking about tea as if time had stopped. In the end, the entire place collapses on him. The tea spills, and everything shatters before Alice's eyes. Then suddenly, the scene disappears completely. Alice opens her eyes and finds herself back in London, in the real world. But the surprise is that she's not safe. She finds herself surrounded by men trying to sexually assault her, but she quickly reacts and defends herself bravely. After that, she heads toward a dark part of the neighborhood, a place known for its bad reputation, run by someone from her past, her former nurse, who used to care for her after her family's death, but who has now completely changed and sunk into a corrupt world. Here, Alice begins to realize that escaping madness isn't easy, and that everything she tries to forget in Wonderland comes back to haunt her in reality. It's as if a thin thread connects the two worlds, and every time she thinks she's broken free, it pulls her back into the depths of her dark mind. After being violently beaten and falling to the ground, Alice suddenly found herself back in Wonderland, in an icy region called Tantravol. There she met a turtle, a creature that had once driven the Infernal Train which destroyed the entire land, but now she was trapped inside a bottle, steering a small ship. After an attack by sharks, the bottle shattered and the turtle was freed. After that, Alice continued her way toward the carpenter, who was planning to present a grand theatrical performance. In the carpenter's town, Alice was asked to help a group of strange artists who were working on his play. The first was a screenwriter in the form of a depressed octopus addicted to alcohol. He was responsible for writing the script, but refused to hand it over until Alice helped him. The second was a musician, shaped like a fish, trapped inside a bottle, singing in an annoying and off-key tone. Alice had to unleash an entire orchestra to fix her music. The rest were a group of deeply sleeping dancers, whom Alice had to awaken so they could join the performance. Then the performance turns into a bloody massacre when the carpenter kills his audience, believing that by doing so, he can prevent the train from returning. His plan fails, and the train destroys the entire place. Before dying, the carpenter directs Alice toward a character named Bumby. Alice then wakes up in London, where the family lawyer, Ratcliffe, interrogates her about the fire that killed her family. However, she begins to realize that the world around her is starting to distort, and once again, she finds herself back in Wonderland. This new world reflects Eastern cultures, much like Ratcliffe's own office, proving that everything she sees is merely a reflection of her own mind. Alice continues to solve puzzles and recover her lost memories. She remembers that she was the one who turned off the fireplace on the night of the fire, and that our cat was not the cause of the tragedy. Later, she discovers the shocking truth. The person responsible was Dr. Bumby, the psychiatrist who had once been her father's student. He had become obsessively in love with her sister Lizzie, and after assaulting and killing her, he set the house on fire to cover up his crime. Then Alice finally reaches Bombyx, a massive caterpillar trapped inside a cocoon wrapped in smoke and shadow. Bombyx served as a guide and a sage, and unlike all the other characters she had met, he was neither cryptic nor evasive. His words were sharp, direct, and carried the weight of truth. He looked at Alice and said, "If you wish to save this world, you must first save yourself. This world is nothing but a reflection of what lies within you." His words struck her like a slap, awakening her from her numbness. He explained that the chaos destroying Wonderland was merely a reflection of her fractured mind, torn between pain and guilt, and that her true salvation could only begin when she faced the Queen, who embodied her anger and self-hatred. As Alice listened, the cocoon around him began to crack slowly. Then, in a deep, resonant voice, Bombyx spoke his final words. "No one can fix this world without fixing themselves first." Moments later, Bombyx transformed into a glowing butterfly, fluttering into the air before disappearing into the smoke, a symbol of transformation and renewal. Then Alice opens her eyes to find herself in a cold cell inside a mental asylum in London, accused of madness and violence. There, her memories begin to return. Locked rooms, harsh therapy sessions, and voices screaming endlessly inside her mind. It is then that she realizes the truth. The infernal train that once tore through Wonderland was nothing more than a symbol of her self-destructive instinct, planted deep within her mind by Dr. Bumby through his cruel and manipulative treatment. Alice continues her journey and enters the Queen's castle, where she discovers that the Queen is nothing more than a reflection of herself, a manifestation of her dark, tormented mind, filled with guilt, anger, and denial. The Queen forces her to face her final nightmare, where Alice stands face to face with Dr. Bumby, now revealed as the Puppet Master, the man who enslaves children and manipulates them like soulless dolls. In her final battle, Alice confronts him in the real world and takes her revenge by pushing him in front of the very train he created, letting him die beneath the weight of his own symbol. After his death, Wonderland finally falls silent, wrapped once again in calm and stillness. At that moment, the Cheshire Cat appears beside her and says softly, "Complete healing is impossible, Alice, but you can learn to live with your pain and with your madness." And so the story ends with peace returning to Wonderland and a quiet madness returning to Alice, a madness that no longer destroys her, but instead keeps her alive.